You're listening to BARSKE Studio True Crime. The story you're about to hear is just one of many hidden in the shadows of Nordic history, based on true events. No emotions, no bias, just facts.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at a really tough story, aren't we? A deep journey into what happens when the justice system gets it wrong. Not just once, but twice.
We're examining the Moen Case, the Fritz Moen case. And it's unique in Europe. It's believed to be the only known double miscarriage of justice in separate murder cases. A real catalog of errors.
And the person at the center of it all, Fritz Moen, his situation. It's just crucial to understanding this whole thing. He was deaf-mute and had a paralyzed right arm. These weren't minor details.
Absolutely not. They were central. Central to how he was perceived, interrogated, and ultimately failed by the system. He was wrongfully convicted for 2 murders, leading to Norway's toughest sentence then. 21 years, plus 10 years of security measures.
So our mission today is to unpack how this could possibly happen, how this system convicted this man, and why it took decades, literally decades, to unravel it all.
Let's start chronologically with the convictions. First, Torunn Finstad. She was a 20-year-old student found raped and murdered near Stavne Bridge in Trondheim. This was back in late 1977.
And Moen was arrested pretty quickly.
Very quickly, and according to the police reports, just 2 days later, he supposedly confessed, admitted to assault, rape, kicking her into the river. That alleged confession was the key.
And that led to the first conviction in 1978. 20 years plus security, though I think the Supreme Court reduced the prison time a bit later.
That's right, reduced to 16 years. But while he was serving that sentence, the state charged him again. This time for the murder of Sigrid Hegheim, another 20-year-old student.
And this crime actually happened before the Finstad murder, right, back in 1976.
Exactly. So you have this strange situation where he's already in prison and they charge him with an earlier crime. Again, the prosecution claimed he confessed, relayed through a deaf interpreter this time.
Which led to the combined maximum sentence, 21 years prison, 10 years security. It beggars belief. Relying so heavily on confessions from someone with such severe communication challenges? How could the courts possibly trust that?
Well, that's the first huge point of failure, isn't it? Later investigations highlighted how terrified Moen often was during questioning. Reports of police literally screaming at him.
Terrible.
Yeah, his deafness, his inability to speak easily, it meant anything he tried to say, any denial, any explanation could be twisted, misunderstood, or frankly just ignored by officials seemingly set on closing the case.
That kind of tunnel vision seems even more blatant in the second conviction for Sigrid Hegheim in '81. Because there, it wasn't just about misunderstanding Moen, they actively disregarded physical evidence.
Yes, absolutely. The defense raised some critical points that were just swept aside. First, the biological evidence. Forensic reports noted blood at the scene and semen in the victim were highly unlikely to be Moen's.
And there was something specific about the blood type.
Crucially, yes, notes confirmed the blood was type A. Fritz Moen was not type A. That's a fundamental mismatch right there in the early file.
Okay, so biological evidence pointing away from him. What else?
The timeline. This is maybe even more, alarming. Moen had a solid alibi for the time Sigrid Hegheim was initially thought to have died.
So what did the prosecution do?
They just moved the time of death, pushed it forward by 18, maybe 24 hours, to a period where Moen didn't have an alibi.
Even though nobody saw the victim during that new time frame.
Exactly. No sightings. They essentially manufactured a window of opportunity by ignoring the existing evidence and Moen's alibi. It's extraordinary.
It flies directly in the face of that basic legal principle, doesn't it? The one about doubt.
In dubio pro reo. Doubt must benefit the accused. I mean, if you have forensic evidence suggesting innocence, and you have to manipulate the timeline to make your case work, that's not just reasonable doubt, that's overwhelming doubt.
Yet the conviction stood, and his appeal for the Sigrid case was thrown out by the Supreme Court in '82.
Dismissed. So Moen remained in prison year after year. It really took an outsider to start shaking things up.
Right, the journalist Tor Sandberg. He started digging into this in the late 90s, didn't he? Around 1998, arguing it was a clear justice mord, a miscarriage of justice.
He did, and he immediately hit a massive roadblock. By the time Moen's lawyer formally requested reopening the Sigrid Hegheim case in 2000, the key biological evidence was gone.
Gone. You mean destroyed?
Destroyed. The semen and blood samples, sometime before 2000, meaning modern DNA analysis, which could have definitively cleared Moen, was impossible.
That seems incredibly suspicious. Was it ever suggested this was deliberate? To prevent exoneration?
The question definitely hangs in the air. There's no concrete proof it was malicious, but the timing, the fact that it was that specific evidence, it speaks volumes about the lack of care, at the very least. And it wasn't just that case. Hair samples from the Torun Finstad case, also destroyed by 2005.
Unbelievable. But even without the physical samples, those original notes about the type of blood in the Heckheim case, they still existed.
They did. And that detail, that documented mismatch, was ultimately enough. The Supreme Court Appeals Committee finally agreed to reopen the Sigrid Heckheim case in 2004.
Which led to his first exoneration, October 2004, acquitted for Sigrid Heckheim's murder.
A huge moment, but incredibly bittersweet. You have to think about Fritz Moen himself. He was finally cleared of one murder, but then he died just 5 months later, March 2005.
Still legally guilty of the other murder, Torun Finstad's.
Still officially guilty. He served 27 years, saw only partial justice in his lifetime. His family, thankfully, kept fighting.
And then came the moment that changed everything for the Finstad case. The deathbed confession.
Yes. Astonishing, really. December 2005, a man named Tor Hepse, on his deathbed, confessed to hospital staff, police, a dean, confessed to murdering both women.
Tor Hepse. So the reopening commission had to look into this. They couldn't just take his word for it, surely.
No, they investigated thoroughly. And they found his confession credible. Chillingly so. It lined up with the facts. Crucially, Hepse's involvement was consistent with that type A blood evidence found at the Heckheim scene.
The evidence that pointed away from Moen all along.
Exactly. Plus, Hepse was known to have been in Trondheim during both attacks, and he had a documented history of severe psychological problems, violence, even sexual assault charges. The profile fit.
So finally, the pieces clicked into place against the actual perpetrator.
Yes. The Torun Finstad case was reopened, and Fritz Moen was fully posthumously acquitted on August 24, 2006, finally declared innocent of both crimes.
Such a long, painful road to the truth. And this complete exoneration forced a reckoning, didn't it? The government had to investigate the system itself.
They did. They set up a review committee in 2007. Their report, NOU 2007.7, it's a stark look at systemic failure. It laid out 3 huge lessons.
What were they?
First, the absolute need for objectivity from police and prosecutors. It was clear they'd fixated on Moen and just ignored anything that didn't fit. Second, the role of expert witnesses.
What about them?
The committee criticized them for being too close to the prosecution, essentially acting as part of the prosecution's team rather than neutral scientific advisors. That's a massive issue for fair trials.
And the third lesson? I imagine it relates back to that ignored evidence.
Precisely. Back to in dubio pro reo. The committee was blunt. The principle that doubt benefits the accused must be strictly followed. Always. They argued the evidence, the blood type, the manipulated timeline, Moen's communication difficulties, all of it should have made the prosecutor demand acquittal.
And if the prosecutor failed, the judges should have stepped in.
Yes, the professional judges should have overruled the jury's guilty verdict, certainly in the Heckheim case, with that evidence staring them in the face. The system failed at multiple levels.
Now, you often expect the media to be the watchdog in these situations, the fourth estate. But they also came under fire here.
They did, heavily. The committee basically said the Norwegian media at the time, back in 78 and 81, were too. Well, the word used was servile towards the justice system. They didn't do their job. They failed to ask the hard questions.
Just reported the official line.
Pretty much. Tor Sandberg, the journalist who eventually broke the case open, even admitted his own early reporting was, quote, quite desolate. He said most journalists just accepted the court's version.
Though, ironically, it was a tabloid, say Og Her, that later funded Sandberg's deep investigation, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Shows that critical journalism can come from unexpected places sometimes. Eventually, though, there was official acknowledgement. The Minister of Justice gave a formal apology after Moen's death, an apology on behalf of the nation and its justice system.
It's just such an extreme case. The vulnerability of Moen due to his disabilities, the way clear forensic science was ignored, the decades it took, and then the final twist of a deathbed confession. It highlights how easily a system designed for justice can become an engine of injustice.
Absolutely. And it points to that core weakness the review committee highlighted. Which brings us back to the evidence itself. The committee recommended a strict rule. Evidence in serious criminal cases should never be destroyed, period, to allow for future review.
Which makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Given that the crucial biological evidence was destroyed in both of Moen's cases, evidence that could have cleared him years earlier, what does that say about justice? Can we really have sort of use by date on physical evidence when someone's freedom, their innocence, the very truth is hanging in the balance?
It's a profound question. The search for truth, especially when a life has been wrongly condemned, surely can't have an expiration date.
Thank you for listening to BARSKE Studio True Crime. The story you've heard is just one of many hidden in the shadows of Nordic history. We release new episodes every week, exploring fresh true stories, from haunting mysteries to chilling crimes. Subscribe and join us next week as we uncover another untold truth. This was BARSKE Studio True Crime, told by AI with no emotion and no filter.